Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Awaiting Arrows. I'm Jubilee Lipsy, if this is your first time, and this video is actually something that I wanted to do for a little bit. It actually only really occurred to me more recently, but I've been waiting for the right time to share the story behind my own miscarriage, since this is the part of my channel where I talk about just infertility struggles, hoping for children, all of that. I'm not going to get into any gory details. I'm mainly sharing this to just glorify God, because this is a very hard thing for so many people, and it was hard for me. And yet my story was really unique, and I took so much comfort from the realization that God knew ahead of time what would happen when, and he prepared me for it in such a way that I have to say it was timed by grace, and I will explain. So summer 2023, I had just published my 5th book. I was feeling kind of worn down. I had lots of questions. If anybody harbors any thoughts that once you publish a book, like you feel perfectly confident in yourself and your insecurities just go away, that is not true. It opens the door to even more. I had lots of questions. The Holy Spirit gave me the idea for a prayer week, like a prayer retreat at home, to really just seek him with no social media. And so I thought, what a good idea. And I immediately checked my calendar for a week that would have minimal distractions with work. And I chose September 4th through 8th, 2023. And that proved to be providential. I was being led by the Lord more than I even realized. Going into this prayer week, I wanted to seek the Lord for his presence primarily, but most of my questions for him centered around different things in my life not playing out the way I'd hoped, and me just wondering, like, is there something wrong? Am I doing something wrong that I need to adjust? And I really thought that I was going to present my questions to God and get a bunch of answers that sounded like this: you're doing a bunch of things wrong. You need to adjust. Here's the formula for success. Like, here's the formula for how to get what you want. And that's oversimplifying, of course, but that was the idea. So I started the prayer week, and God totally revolutionized it. And that's why I want to share this, because I gained so much during a week that would be the loss of my first pregnancy. So heading into the week of September 4th, I was feeling strange in ways that were very specific to me. Like no one, maybe to somebody else it would be normal, but to me it was really odd. I was really hot, which is so not normal for me. I'm always cold. I was nauseous and hungry at the same time, and I had a really high heart rate. And anytime I drank soda or coffee, any caffeine, it would race out of control to the point where I couldn't catch my breath. So that's when I decided, okay, maybe something is off. Maybe I'm pregnant, but based on the timing of other things on the calendar, it was too early to take a pregnancy test. So I just waited. And I did eventually take a test, but it was still too early. It was negative. So I started the prayer week and immediately sensed God speaking about what he had already done in my life. He said things like, your books weren't even on your radar, and now they're on your shelf. For those of you who don't know, I'm a biblical fiction self-published author. He said, your books weren't on your radar originally, and now they're on your shelf. You have to trust that I'll do the same with your kids. And that would turn out to be a very timely message as the symptoms started intensifying and I started praying differently. So I would listen to God during the day, and at night I would come apart emotionally, just wondering what was going on with my body and praying for God to make it clear what was happening. And it really never occurred to me that I could be miscarrying a very early pregnancy until it became obvious by what my body started to do. And I'll spare you the gory details, but suffice it to say, it was obvious that my body had started to hold on to a pregnancy and now was losing it. And both my husband and I had never really gone through that before. And so we were sort of spared some of the crazy grief a lot of people go through, because, and I'm not saying crazy in the sense of like wrong, I just mean crazy as in intense grief, but we were just more confused and really blindsided. We had never even seen a positive pregnancy test, but when I spoke to my doctor, she confirmed that this is what was happening. My body was taking care of it on its own, so I didn't need the doctor to do anything, but I was losing a lot of blood, so I did go to get tested just to make sure everything was baseline once everything started calming down. And that's when it became more intense emotionally, because I was just surviving this strange scenario, honestly, and just trying to figure out what the right thing to do was. Is this going to be a medical emergency? Kind of stuff like that. And I can only handle one thing at a time. So it became more intense emotionally after I knew that I was in the clear. And I was almost angry and upset in hindsight for not being more upset while it was happening. And it was early, so it wasn't as gory as it can be. Sometimes now I feel really sad and resentful that I never even got to see a positive test or feel a bond or a kick or something. But honestly, as it was happening, God was protecting me so much. I mean, it wasn't even like I started coming apart and then he stepped in to help me. It was like he was already holding me from the beginning in a way that I didn't know I would end up needing. It was preemptive care, and it counted so much. So in light of how well he was caring for me, it was like I couldn't get too angry. I mean, was it sad and unfair? Yeah, but it also felt like the whole thing was covered in so much grace, and I'm choosing to focus on that. And it is also really cool to stop every so often and think about the fact that there was a life that was created between Tim and I that is waiting for us in heaven, and I didn't really process that until much later, but it is amazing. Now, what was God saying to me in the midst of all this? Well, he hijacked my prayer week, which it's a prayer week. It should be about him. He took my questions and basically wrapped them up in his hands and said, I'm the answer. And your deepest longings point to a new level of pursuit of me that you're ready for. He basically showed me that I had grown to a point where I need more of him than I used to. And that's what growth looks like for the Christian. We grow more dependent on God, not less. Don't ever be just content with where you are at with God. It's all good, but there's always more. Don't ever think you've seen it all and done it all and you're good to just coast. God showed me that I needed to basically change the way I did life. Rather than plunging ahead, listening to all the voices of culture telling me what I needed to achieve and who I was supposed to be, and just struggling after that while praying for God's blessing, he was like, it's time to get back to your first love, the childlike wonder that filled you when you first fell in love with me. And he said, you need to spend your time pursuing me, and all your priorities and activities will flow out of that. He reminded me how far I'd come, some of the powerful lessons I'd learned through years of physical challenges and marriage and moving cross country and church struggles and unexplained infertility. And he basically led me to repent for all the things in my life that I had despised or written off as lost opportunities because they didn't turn out how I wanted. God showed me his perspective on all of those, and basically said they're valuable because of your obedience and what I did in the midst of those things. And you need to stop resenting those experiences. Those experiences were gifts. He started giving me better questions to ask. Things like, what future yeses to God? We're supposed to be saying yes to God every day. What future yeses am I building up for tomorrow's harvest? Have you thought about that? I mean, these are deep questions that I could not have come up with. And I know all of these things. I'm reading off of some notes, but I know all this because I took copious notes during this time. So I have all this in my journal, and it was like God had something new to say every day. He told me things like, when your calling lacks a path with clear steps, because sometimes it doesn't look like that, go out to meet me and I'll direct you. Like, don't go out to meet your calling looking for the next step. Just come to me. Don't decide who you are outside of me. You are mine. He said, that's your highest identity. And my covering of favor is the highest reality in your life. All other realities bow to that one. Those are just some of the things that he said. And I mean, I am not exaggerating when I say that I am completely oversimplifying it. It was so rich and so deep, and it all came from him. It was not what I was expecting at all. This was a life-changing week, and it laid the foundations for the new God-centered schedule that I'm walking now, that he would have me set up in the new year. It's revolutionized my days because he took me off of this path that I was following that was like, well, I'm doing what I think I should do. And he pointed me down the road that is uniquely mine. Don't base your path on what other people's lives look like. But what made all this so much more meaningful was that it was happening in the midst of this miscarriage. God was carrying me not only by just holding me together during a tough time, but by going above and beyond that and equipping me. It was like he was binding an injury and getting me into rehab exercises before I even realized I was injured. And that's the God we serve. So I want to encourage you. I understand that no two stories of loss or miscarriage or grief of any kind are the same, but our God is the same. And he loves you so much and has a good plan for your life. This world is full of trouble. Our bodies don't always work the way they're designed to. Things hurt. Things are unfair. We lose. But God is the reason we win. I don't know the details of your story, but I know what step one of your healing journey needs to be. And that is to seek him. Ask him what he's doing. Ask him what he's saying. And then listen without judgment, without accusation. Listen like a lover expecting to hear something precious, and you will. And while you're listening and pursuing and resting in him, he will hold everything else. Trust his shoulders to bear the burdens that yours can't. He will hold everything, including the things you didn't think you were strong enough to give. And you will be blessed. I hope this story was a blessing to you, because it sure was a blessing to me, and it's a privilege to share it. God bless you.